and that is how to accept user input in JavaScript. All right, so okay, let's replace console.log. We'll change the text content of our h1 element. I will give this h1 element a unique ID. Let's say my h1. We need to select my h1 element. Document.getElementById. The ID was my h1. We are changing the text content equal to, let's use a template literal, hello username. All right, let's try this again. Type in your username, press submit, and that Should change the h1 element. Hello, whatever your name is. All right, everybody. We are changing the text content equal to, let's use a template numbers to booleans, booleans to strings, numbers to strings, booleans to numbers. I think you get the idea. Why might we want to do this? Well, when we accept user input, the data type of that input is a string. If we need to use it for any sort of math, we need to convert it to a number. Here's an example. Let's say we have variable age. I will create a window prompt, window.prompt. We will ask a user, how old are you? I'm going to add 1 to our age plus equals 1, then console.log age. How old are you? Let's say I'm 25, press OK. Let's inspect our page, go to console. It shows that age is 251. When we accept user input, it's a string data type, a series of characters. By adding 1, we appended 1 to the end of our string. We're not increasing our age by 1. We're doing string concatenation. We are going to convert our user input into a number, and this is how. So after accepting our user input, and before making any changes to it, let's reassign age equal to, and this is a function, the number function. It will convert another data type, such as a string or boolean, into a number. Then we'll place our age variable within that function. So now this should work. How old are you? Let's say I'm 25, press OK. 26. So that's the reason you may want to type convert, because different data types behave differently. Along with my age variable, I'm going to display the type of age. What's the data type? How old are you? 25, press OK. 26, and it shows that the data type of age is number. If we removed this type conversion, and then run this again, it shows that our age is 251, and it's a string, which is not exactly what we would like. That's a reason why type conversion is important. Let me give you another example. Let's create 3 variables. Let x, let y, and let z. I'll show you what happens when we convert different values into different data types. Let's say x is the word pizza. Same thing with y and z. I will typecast x as a number. Then we need to place x within the number function. I kind of want to see what happens when we try and convert pizza into a number. It's probably not going to go well. Let's convert y into a string. Then z will be a boolean. Let's console.log x, as well as the type of x. Let's do the same thing with y and z. All right, what's going to happen? If you attempt to convert alphabetical characters into a number, that variable will be nan, which means not a number. The data type is still number, though, as you can see. The word pizza is already a string, so converting it into a string really doesn't do anything. That's why for this line, the value is still pizza, and the data type is still a string. If you convert a string into a boolean, booleans again are either true or false. Converting the word pizza into a boolean returns true, and the data type is boolean. So basically, as long as there's some value here, and you convert it into a boolean, it will always be true. Let's replace pizza with 0. What will happen? We can convert 0 into a number. It doesn't contain any alphabetical characters. X contains 0, it's a number. Y is 0, but it's treated as a string. Z contains true, and it's a boolean. What about empty strings? Just a set of quotes. Typecasting an empty string as a number. Word pizza. Same thing with y and z. I will typecast x as a number. Then we need to place x within the number function. I kind of want to see what happens when we try and convert pizza into a number. It's probably not going to go well. Let's convert y into a string.log x, as well as the type of x. Let's do the same thing with y and z. All right, what's going to happen? If you attempt to convert alphabetical characters into a number, that variable will be nan, which means not a number. The data type is still number, though, as you can see. The word pizza is already a string, so converting it into a string really doesn't do anything. That's why for this line, the value is still pizza, and the data type is still a string. If you convert a string into a boolean, booleans again are either true or false. Converting the word pizza into a boolean returns true, and the data type is boolean. So basically, as long as there's some value here, and you convert it into a boolean, it will always be true. Let's replace pizza with 0. What will happen? We can convert 0 into a number. It doesn't contain any alphabetical characters. X contains 0, it's a number. Y is 0, but it's treated as a string. Z contains true, and it's a boolean. What about empty strings? Just a set of quotes. Typecasting an empty string as a number is still 0. We have an empty string for y. Then with our boolean, it's false. Why might you want to typecast a string as a boolean? That's one way in which you can check to see if user input is empty. Like, did somebody type something in? If the user skips user input, it's most likely going to be an empty string. Then you can check to see, like, if this is false, then the user didn't type in anything, and you can let them know. What about a variable that's declared but not assigned a value? Converting an undefined variable to a number results in not a number. Our string is undefined, and our boolean variable returns false. So that's the basics of type conversion. It's the process of changing the data type of a value to another. It's pretty important when you accept user input, because when you accept user input, it's a string data type. At times, you may want to convert it to a number if you need to include that number with any sort of arithmetic expressions, or a boolean if you're checking to see if that user input was completed. We'll have more practice with this in the future. And well, that is type conversion in JavaScript. Why, hello. So today I need to explain const. Const, short for constants, are variables that can't be changed once you assign them. In this example, we're going to create a program to calculate the circumference of a circle, given a radius. Let's define our variables. First, we have pi. We'll begin with using let, then I'll show you the benefit of using const. We have let radius, which we will assign later. Now we need to ask the user what the radius of a circle. Then once we have our radius, when we accept user input, it's a string data type. We need to convert our radius into a number by using the number function. Then once we have our radius, we can calculate the circumference by setting circumference equal to, and here's the formula, 2 times pi times our radius that the user enters in. Then once we have our circumference, let's console.log our circumference. Let's see if this works. Enter the radius of a circle, I'll enter 10, press OK. The circumference is 62.8. So why might you want to use a constants program? You may accidentally, or somebody else may maliciously, change the value of a variable so that the program doesn't behave as intended. For example, somewhere within my program, I will set pi to be a new number. Pi equals 420.69. Let's run this program again. Enter the radius of a circle, I'll enter 10, press OK, and my circumference is 8,413. I may not realize that this is the incorrect answer. Just for an extra security measure, I can turn any variables that shouldn't change to be a constant. Replace let with const. And it is good practice if you have any constants to make all of the letters in the variable name uppercase. So pi is now capital Pi. Hey, this is Bro from the future. There's one thing I needed to clarify that I forgot to mention. Capitalizing your constants is usually only done with primitive data types, such as numbers and booleans. Reference data types, such as strings, don't normally follow this convention. You'll see this in the next few upcoming videos. Pi is a constant and we're assigning a number, that's why I'm making it all uppercase. But if this was a string, normally we wouldn't. That is all. Let's try and change that variable again. Pi equals 420.69. So we have an uncaught type error. Assignment to constant variable. So JavaScript won't let us reassign constants once they are assigned once. We can't make any changes to it. Once you declare a constant, you can't change the value, and that's pretty helpful in a lot of circumstances. It's an extra security measure. What we'll do this time is within our web page, we will accept some user input via a text box. We'll rewrite the same program. Let's create an h1 element. I will set the ID of the h1 element to be my h1, and the text will be enter the radius of a circle. I'll create a text box. Input. I'll set the type equal to text, the ID equal to my text. I'll create a label for this input text box. Let's say radius. I'll add a button. The button will say submit. The ID will be my submit. Then I'll add 2 breaks right after the text box to make it look nice. Let's get rid of console. The button will say submit. The ID will be my submit. Then I'll add 2 breaks right after the text box to make it look nice. Let's get rid of console.log. When we click on the submit button, we will execute a function. We need to select the button. Let's take our document, get element by ID. The ID is my submit. Follow this with dot on click equals a function, parentheses, curly braces. When we click on the button, we'll execute any code within the curly braces. We can eliminate our window prompt. We need to get the value from the text box. Again, we can use document.getElement by ID, but the ID is going to be my text, the text from the text box. Dot value. Get the value from the text box, and we will assign that to radius. Then we will typecast our input as a number. Then we will calculate the circumference. But since pi is a constant, make sure that the letters are uppercase pi. Once we have our circumference, let's change an h3 element. So let's add that as well. h3, the ID will be my h3. There will be no text content. Then again, we will get element by ID. The ID will be my h3. Change the text content of this element to equal our circumference. Okay, let's try this. The radius is 10. Press submit. And here is our circumference. Maybe this will be in centimeters. So let me change that. I'll use string concatenation and just add plus centimeters. So 10, submit, 62.83 centimeters. If I attempt to change the value of pi, maybe I'll do that here. Pi equals 420.69. Rerun the program, 10, submit. There doesn't appear to be a result. So if we go to DevTools, go to console, we have that uncaught type error, assignment to const pi. Maybe I'll do that here. Pi equals 420.69. Rerun the program, 10, submit. There doesn't appear to be a result. So if we go to DevTools, go to console, we have that uncaught type error, assignment to constant variable. So again, we can't change the value of a constant. There are more graceful ways of handling this. We'll learn about that when we get to exception handling. However, this is what we wanted. We do not want to be able to change the value of a constant. All right, everybody, so those are constants. It's just a variable that can't be changed once you assign it a value. And well, those are constants in JavaScript. Hey, what's going on, everybody? So in today's video, we're going to create a counter program using JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right, let's begin, everybody. So what we're going to do is start with our index.html file. We'll add any necessary elements. Then we will style those elements with our CSS file. Then lastly, we will add functionality via JavaScript. So let's begin with our HTML file. Within the body of our document, I will create a label to store the count. So I will create a label with an ID of count label. The text will be 0. It's a little small, but that's okay. We'll increase the font size with CSS. I'll add a break afterwards with a break tag. We'll need 3 buttons: decrease, reset, and increase. So we have button 1. Let's copy this button, paste it 2 additional times. The ID for the first button will be decrease, btn4 button. The text will be decrease. Then for the second button, the ID will be reset button. The text will be reset. Then increase, ID, increase, button. The text will be increase. What I'm also going to do is place our buttons within a div section. Let's cut our buttons, then place the buttons within the div. I will give the div a unique ID of button container. We'll center align our button container so it's in the middle of the window. Okay, that is everything we need with our HTML file. Let's move to our CSS file. Let's style the count label. It's a little small right now. I will select the ID count label. I will display the label as a block level element. I will text align center so it's in. Let's style the count label. It's a little small right now. I will select the ID count label. I will display the label as a block level element. I will text align center so it's in the center of our screen. Let's increase the font size. I tend to like to use the EM unit of measurement. The text will be 10 times the size. Then let's change the font family. Pick a font of your choosing. For this example, I'll use Helvetica. Let's center the button container. That should surround all three buttons, as you can see here. The ID was button container text align center. Okay, the buttons should be in the middle. One thing I forgot to do, let's actually add a class to our buttons too. Class equals buttons. There. All right, we will select the buttons class. I'll add some padding. Padding 10 pixels and 20 pixels. Let's increase the font size. Font size 1.5 EM. That translates to 150%. Let's pick a font color. I'll just pick white. Then a background color for the buttons. Background dash color. I'll use HSL values. How's that? Not feeling it. That's pretty good. Let's round the corners with border radius, 5 pixels. I'll change the cursor into a pointer when we hover over a button. Cursor, pointer. Then we'll add a transition animation. Transition, background, dash color, after 0.25 seconds. Then we'll apply the hover pseudo class when we hover over one of the buttons. Take our buttons class, use the hover pseudo class. We will change the background color after a quarter of a second, then change the background color to something slightly darker. Yeah, that looks good. There should be a delay when you hover over one of the buttons. Our HTML file is done, save with our a quarter of a second, then change the background color to something slightly darker. Yeah, that looks good. There should be a delay when you hover over one of the buttons. Our HTML file is done, save with our CSS. Now we need to add functionality because background color to something slightly darker. Yeah, that looks good. There should be a delay when you hover over one of the buttons. Our HTML file is done, save with our CSS. Now we need to add functionality because, well, these buttons don't do anything. I will individually assign all of these buttons so that each is stored within a constant. So const decrease button equals, then we need to select each button by accessing our document dot get element by ID. What's the ID we're selecting? We will begin with our decrease button. All right. Then we need our reset button. Reset button. The ID is reset button. Then increase button. Increase button. The ID is increase button. We need our count label. Okay, then we will set const count label equals, then we need to get the ID of our count label. So document.getElement by ID, count label. Then we will use let count equal 0. We'll be reassigning count. We'll be incrementing and decrementing count. With our HTML elements, we do not plan on reassigning them, so we can set them as constants. Now we need a few functions, 3 functions. One for each of these buttons, decrease, reset, increase. Let's begin with increase. So we are taking our increase button that we assigned. With the onClick attribute of this button, set this equal to a function. What's it going to do when we want to one for each of these buttons, decrease, reset, increase. Let's begin with increase. So we are taking our increase button that we assigned. With the onClick attribute of this button, set this equal increase. So we are taking our increase button that we assigned. With the onClick attribute of this button, set this equal to a function. What's it going to do when we want to increase this value of our count label? Let's increment count by 1, count plus plus. Then we will set the text content of our label, count label dot text content equals whatever the count currently is. Let's see if this works. It looks like I misspelled onClick. All right, let's see if this works. Yep, every time we press the button, our count label increases by 1. Okay, let's work on decrease. Then we will use let count equals 0. We'll be reassigning count. We'll be incrementing and decrementing count. With our HTML elements, we do not plan on reassigning them, so we can set them as constants. Now we need a few functions, 3 functions. One for each of these buttons, decrease, reset, increase. Let's begin with increase. So we are taking our increase button that we assigned, with the onClick attribute of this button, set this equal to a function. What's it going to do? When we want to increase this value of our count label, let's increment count by 1, count plus plus. Then we will set the text content of our label, count label dot text content equals whatever the count currently is. Let's see if this works. It looks like I misspelled onClick. All right, let's see if this works. Yep, every time we press the button, our count label increases by 1. Okay, let's work on decrease. Really, we can just copy this function, paste it. Let's change increase to decrease. Count minus minus. Save everything, and we should be able to increase and decrease. Then the reset button. Let's copy one of these functions, change decrease button to reset. We can program it with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. Hey, what's going on, everybody? So today I'm going to explain math. Math is a built-in JavaScript object that provides a collection of math-related properties and methods. For example, if you ever need the value of pi, you would type math with a capital M dot pi. Then let's console.log this. Console.log math.pi. Pi is 3.14 in the series, but if you ever need it, it's there. Type math, then display z. Down 2, 2, 1, 3 for to use the would be SQ. Find the is 2 point within this one. T the same is negative. We can find the dot JavaScript object. Hey, what's going on, everybody? So in today's video, we're going to create a random number generator between 0 and generate a random number between 1 and 2. Is floor method should be capital. There. So far, our random number is going to be between 0 and 5. So there's 0 and there's 5. But between 0 and 6 decimal portion, most likely. Let's say we would like to roll a 6-sided dice. I need a random number between 1 and 6, not including the decimal portion. So the first step is that we will multiply math.random times 6. What this will do is give us a random number between 0 and 6 exclusive. Now I don't want the decimal portion, I would like a whole integer. We'll enclose this equation with the floor method of math. Math.floor. Then we will enclose our equation. So now we have, oops, looks like I misspelled math. It should be capital. There. So far, our random number is going to be between 0 and 5. So there's 0 and there's 5. But I need 1 through 6. Well, we can increase the minimum by adding +1, or whatever you want the minimum to be. So now that should give us a random number between 1 and 6. There's 6 is going to be method. In the video, we're going to create a random number generator, but first I need to explain how to create a random number in JavaScript. Let's store our random number within a variable which we will name random num. To create a random number in JavaScript, we can use the random method of math. Math.random method. This will generate a random number between 0 and 1. But it looks like we forgot to output our random number, so let's do that with console.log. Console.log random num. This will generate a random number between 0 and 1. It will give us a number with a long decimal portion, most likely. Let's say we would like to roll a 6-sided dice. I need a random number. What this will do is give us a random number between 0 and 6 exclusive. Now I don't want the decimal portion, I would like a whole integer. We'll enclose this equation with the floor method of capital. But I need 1 to 6. Math certain range. Let's say 50. There's one additional change we need to make. For example, our I'm going to set 2 constants. Const min, what's the minimum? Let's say 50. And the max, const max, will be 100. Let's replace 100 with our maximum and 1 with our minimum. There's one additional change we need to make. For example, our random number is 139. We're multiplying math.random times 100, our maximum, then adding an additional 50 to it. So one change we're going to make is that we will subtract our minimum from our maximum. Then I will surround this portion of our equation with a set of parentheses just to force operator precedence. Now the random number should be between 50 and 100. So depending on the range of numbers, we'll create a dice. With the all right, now with that out of the way, let's create our random number generator. Let's go to our HTML file. I will create a dice. All right, we're getting M, meaning radius. I will select the label. The ID is mine. Did not assign it quite yet. Okay, 1 to floor.text, not a number. 5 to an entire class. Be sure to save all of your files. Then within our JavaScript file, let's replace my label with label 1. The ID is label 1. Copy this line of code. Then we need labels 2 and 3. Label 2, label 3. Let's rename random num as random num1. Random num to be random num1. Copy this whole 1. Equals random num1. Copy this line, paste it 2 times. Change 1 to be 2. Then for the third line, change 1 to be 3. What we'll do now is generate 3 random numbers between 1 and 6, as if we're rolling 3 dice. 2, 3, 2, 3, 6, 1, 2, 2, 5. All right, everybody, that's how to create a random number generator in JavaScript. True, we can execute some code. If it's not true, we can do something else. That's how to put it simply. For example, let's say we have a user's age. Let age equals 25. To write our age variable is greater than or equal to 18. If message, we'll execute that this condition is true, an else clause. If this is not true, we will do whatever's within the else clause. Let's display a different message. You must be 18 plus to enter this site. My age is 13. We will end up displaying
You must be 18 plus to enter this site. Basically speaking, if this condition is true, do this. Else, if not, do this instead. It's kind of like a fork in the road. Which path are we going to take? Here's another example. Let's say we have variable time. Time will be in hours in military time. If our time is 9, as in 9 a.m., let's write an if statement. If time is less than 12, as in noon, then console.log good morning. Else if it's after 12, that means it's at least the afternoon. Console.log good afternoon. The time is 9, as in 9 a.m., good morning. What if our time was 14, like 1400 in military time? Well, then we will display good afternoon. Conditions also work very well with Boolean variables. Let's create a Boolean variable is good afternoon. Conditions also work very well with time with if not, then false in itself. The condition either evaluates you are were true. That's how to spell license. Curious. Has be 16 plus to have your license. Since this condition is false, put braces like law else reaching your else less this clause another. Enter the you are we start 118 if correctly 0 is born. An exercise we'll create after then a text box. The label will be input will be my submit. Say is the constants const my text equals document dot get element by ID. The ID is going to be my text and const my submit. That's the submit button. Document dot get element by ID. The ID is going to be my submit. Then lastly, result element. Const result element equals document dot get element button is named my. When we remember when result element dot text content equals our function submit element quite yet is code. Let's work on it. This condition is false. We skip this clause. This condition was true. We execute this clause and skip everything else that comes after. Using all this code, let's work on an exercise. We're going to create a text box and a button so somebody can submit their age. Then depending on what they enter, we will display a message. So within our HTML file, we'll create a few things. Let's create a label. The text on the label will be enter your age. Let's add a break after, then a text box. The label will be input. The type will be text. The ID will be my text. I'll add a break. We'll create a submit button. Button type equals submit. The ID will be my submit. The text on the button will be submit. I will also create a paragraph element. The ID, let's say, is result element to display a result. All right, that is everything we'll need. So we can't see the paragraph element quite yet. The text content of the result element will be one of these lines of text. So let's go back to our index file. We'll create our elements. I will set them to be constants. Const my text equals document dot get element by ID. The ID is going to be my text and const my submit. That's the submit button. Document dot get element by ID. The ID is going to be my submit. Then lastly, result element. Const result element equals document dot get element by ID. The ID is result element. Let's scoot these if statements down. When I click on the button, we will execute a function. The button is named my submit. My submit dot on click attribute equals a function. When we click on the button, what are we going to do? Let's take all of our if, else if, and else clauses, cut them, then paste them within the function for the button. When we click on the button, then we will check our age. Let's set this variable to be undefined. Then we will get our age from the text box. Age equals my text dot value, get the value from the text box, and assign it to age. But remember, when we get text from a text box, it's a string data type. We need to typecast it to a number. So we will set age to equal, then use the number function to convert it to a number. Then we can check our age. We'll replace console.log with the text content of the result element. Result element dot text content equals our message. I'll use a template literal, so I'll use backticks. Let's copy our text, paste it within the template literal, then I will delete the console.log message. So we'll just follow this pattern. Result element dot text content equals our message. All right, let's see if this works. So we will type in our age. Let's say I'm 25, press submit. And we have one problem. Let's see what's going on. Oops, okay, so I forgot to add a set of parentheses after the function. Let's add that. Let's say I'm 25, press submit. You are old enough to enter the site. Let's say I'm 12. You must be 18 plus to enter the site. What if I'm 101? You are too old to enter the site. What if I'm 0? You can't enter, you were just born. I'm -1. Your age can't be below 0. All right, everybody, so that is everything you need to know to get started working with if statements in JavaScript. Hey, so today I'm going to explain the checked property in JavaScript. The checked property determines the checked state of an HTML checkbox or a radio button element. By examining this property, we can determine if a checkbox is checked or a radio button is selected. In this program, if I were to not select any of these buttons, we have a different result. Within our HTML file, we will create an input element. The type is going to equal checkbox. Then for the ID, I will set this equal to my checkbox. And here's our checkbox. We should probably add a label so that people know what this is for. So the label, I will set the for attribute to be my checkbox. What's the label going to say? Let's say subscribe, like a subscribe button. Utilizing the for attribute, if the for attribute is the same as the ID, when we click on the label, it should still select the checkbox. All right, let's add a break. Then we will create some radio buttons. We will again need an input element. The type this time will not be a checkbox. It will be radio. For the ID, this will be a VSUB button. I'm going to abbreviate button to BTN, so pay attention to that. Then I will create a label for this radio button. We will set the for attribute to be the same as the ID. Then the text will be Visa. I'm going to add a break. Okay, let's copy this radio button, paste it 2 times. We'll change the second Visa to be MasterCard. Let's change the ID first. MasterCard. Let's copy the ID, paste it within the for attribute of the second label. Then change the text. MasterCard. Then the third ID will be PayPal button. Then change the for attribute and the text. PayPal. So with radio buttons, they should all be within the same group. Currently they're not, so I can select all of them if I would like. We should only be able to select one from any group. We will group these radio buttons by their name attribute. They should all have the same name. The name, let's say, is card. So let's copy this attribute and paste it within the other input elements. Now we should only be able to select one, and that appears to work. Lastly, let's create a submit button. We are creating a button. The text will be submit. The type is submit. And for the ID will be my submit. I will create a paragraph element. We'll populate it with some text, depending if subscribe is checked or not. Same thing goes with our radio buttons. I will create 2 paragraphs after our button. The ID on the first paragraph. Let's name sub result. There will be no text content to begin with. We'll change the text content of our sub result paragraph with some text that states if the user is subscribed or not. We'll create another paragraph for the radio buttons. Again, there's going to be no text content. I'll set the ID of this paragraph to be payment result. Now, before we move to our JavaScript file, I'm just going to edit the CSS on the button to make it a little bit bigger so you guys can read it. So the ID of that button was my submit. We are selecting an ID, my submit. I will set the font.